Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the CAPISAR Podcast. My name is Aswin Subramanyan, and I've been given this great privilege of hosting this show. And we begin this new journey of exploring astrology and also beyond astrology, talking about ethics and integrity in the field of astrology. So, we are probably aiming at excellence, which means there is basically no end to our pursuit at CAPISAR. And if you're an astrologer or a student or anyone who is very curious about this field, I think you will surely enjoy this show, and the future seems to be very, very exciting. So, today I'm really honored to be joined by two of the key figures, not just in CAPISAR, but also uh, from the perspective of the entire astrological community. So, first is we have Patrick Watson, who is the president of CAPISAR and needs no introduction. And his contributions behind the scene for CAPISAR has really played a pivotal role in kind of recalibrating our position in the community. And one of those exciting projects that's coming up, and now we have this podcast. So there is a lot we are working on, and we have Michelle Gould, who is the vice president of CAP ISAR, and she has served as ethics chair as well. And her contribution towards the ethics and integrity of astrological setup is second to none. And her voice is extremely essential in shaping the future of astrology and its professionalization. So, in this episode, we will be introducing what CAP ISAR is. And thanks, Patrick and Michelle, for joining. I'm sure this is going to be great.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having
having
us.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here at the inaugural episode of the CAPISAR podcast. I am the president of CAPISAR, so I guess it makes sense that Michelle and I are here today. So, yeah, we hope everyone watching can get something out of these episodes, and yeah, I'm really stoked to talk about it.
So, first of all, I think it's important for, I mean, although people may know you, the the next gen of astrological community is growing, and so I think it is better if we start with an introduction for both of you from both personal perspective as astrologers and also in terms of what you do for CAP ISAR. So let's start with Michelle.
Oh, wow. I've been interested in astrology and started my journey in astrology probably in the late 80s, but I didn't become a professional astrologer until probably the late 90s. Um, I took, I was, it can be a very lonely journey, especially pre-internet age. To be an astrologer. I decided after I'd been doing astrology for a while, I heard about a school opening up called the Avalon School of Astrology. And I went there primarily to develop community. And that's one of the things I think CAPISAR and ISAR and the orgs actually promote because they create places where people can meet and get to know each other as professionals. So that was the start of my journey. From there, I ended up being on the ESR board. Um, I've been involved in the community and and a lot of the nonprofit areas for a long, long time. Too many to actually kind of even audit. I've helped with UX, you name it. I've done it in the community. And I'm really excited about what's coming up in this kind of reimagining of CAPISAR and what we can help our fellow colleagues achieve.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, Patrick.
Um, my background in astrology, I my mum was an astrologer, and that's
Ah,
how I was introduced to astrology. From reading my very first horoscope in the Reader's Digest, uh, around like 7 or 8 years old, wondering whether or not I was a Libra or a Scorpio because my son is right on the edge. And my mom said, "Oh, well, obviously you're a Libra, you know." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And she's like, "Well, we have your birth time." She's like, "I made sure your father got it when you were born because I wanted to cast your chart." And so, she gave me my sort of first reading around 11, and I devoured her whole bookshelf. And by 14 to 15, right around 15 years old, that was when I really got sort of more serious about learning about astrology. And then I logged on to MySpace around age 17. And the first person I spoke to about astrology on MySpace was Chris Brennan, who became my sort of big brother in astrology. And I also met Nick Dagan Best, who sort of became a mentor. And really, I was mentored by a whole community of professional astrologers on that MySpace astrology group. Sam Reynolds was there. Astro Barry was there, and so I was just a teen, and that was how I was introduced to sort of this world of like professional astrology. And I was introduced to Hellenistic astrology just a year after that. I was only 18 at that conference, and I didn't actually get into astrology full time until I got to my Saturn return. But I say all this to say that really I've been studying astrology seriously for the past 20 years, basically, which seems crazy to say. I'm now 37. I'm not good at being concise, but basically, I have been in the community for a long time. Haven't always been super public necessarily with what I've been doing, but it seems like people who are in the community seem to know a bit about me and my work. And so it was in the summer of 2023, I believe, that I was asked by ISAR to take on this role with CAPISAR. And so I've tried to do my best to be of service to the organization at a time when there was a lot to be done to bring it up to par. And now we're over a year on, and we are now reaching a point where, now that we have reached a kind of point of operability, we now are looking to improve and expand what we do. And this podcast is an example of that. We haven't really done a whole lot of outreach to the community, or really a concerted effort in that, because there's been so many internal affairs we've needed to tend to. And so I don't come to this position with necessarily like a ton of like administrative experience. I mostly come to this position thinking sort of just of what needs to be accomplished, common sense, and the little bit of tech know-how I guess I have. So that's really what I bring to this. And also I do believe in certification. I do believe in the professionalization of astrology. I do believe that having some sort of standard that astrologers can aspire to, will help the field. And so philosophically, I am in line, with that desire to see aspiring astrologers to aspire to, the standard, that is being offered by astrological organizations. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see where things go from here, because there's I wouldn't say like there's no limit to what we can do, but I think there are certainly like incredible possibilities now.
That's amazing. And I'm pretty sure there is a lot more coming up. And one of the key things that we need to define is the difference between ISAR and CAPISAR. So I think, it's better we set it straight from the get-go.
Yes. ISAR is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that promotes education and other resources, educational resources for astrology. CAPISAR stands for Certifying Astrological Professionals for the International Society for Astrological Research. We are a 501c6 organization, which is separate from ISAR, and we specifically exist to certify eligible astrologers That is our single purpose, is to serve the astrologers around the world who want to pursue certification. So that is the difference. You could think of ISAR as the umbrella organization, and CAPISAR is a branch or arm of that organization.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an accurate way to put it, Michelle?
Yeah, like the training arm. So we provide the certification testing and so forth, but we also provide the training to get people to the level, to help point. Let's put it this way. Just like you can operate a little bit by yourself in an island if you're not careful as an astrologer, because you're just seeing clients all the time, right? Talking to other astrologers about ethics, like all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. So we have trainings that kind of open up conversations and expose people to things that maybe you don't get exposed to when you're working individually day in and day out.
Correct. So, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and to be clear, like the reason there are different organizations is it's purely like legal requirements. Like that's why so we know this is a common point of confusion. ISAR is also in the name of CAPISAR, so some people just think we are ISAR, but we are separate from ISAR. We are kind of nephew,
Subsidiary
or niece,
bodies.
of the parent organization. Yeah.
So, CAP is basically why we exist. So, as part of competency exam and certification, so let's go and talk about why certification is important, because astrology is a largely unregulated field, even despite the existence of so many organizations across the world, and especially in the West, America and England and other parts of Europe. But still, somehow we find ourselves in a very difficult spot where we cannot completely regulate the field. But within our reach and what we can do, I think there is a lot more scope to kind of widen how we limit the astrologers to stay within the ethical and integrity related boundaries. But on the other hand, certification also becomes really important. So, how do you think certification is one of the pillars of regulating the field of astrology, and how do we kind of regulate the astrologers itself from a CAPISAR perspective?
I also, I want to speak to it a little personally. Like I was doing astrology before it was accepted. Like right now, it's kind of in a heyday where people think it's interesting. People kind of think it's cool. But there was a time period where it just wasn't very popular, and it was partially because it had a bad reputation, right? And that kind of professionalization and setting standards and self-regulating just kind of lifts the reputation of everybody who's practicing. So that's one of the reasons. If we want to be taken seriously and we have things to offer the world, then we need to be operating at a certain standard, one that's equivalent to other professions.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes astrology can be lumped in with other practices that can, in some ways, understandably, has, in some cases unfairly, but in other cases understandably, a reputation of fraudulence, of unethical behaviors, and I would much rather that astrologers are setting their own kind of standards for what we, want to consider sort of ethical or proper or practical versus an external body. And I'm not saying like that would necessarily be like an immediate concern necessarily, but you never know. Political winds can shift in any given country, and so it makes sense for astrologers to have our own sort of standards that we want to reach for ourselves to to help maintain and improve our image, as well as to make sure that we are showing transparently to the public that we are accountable to a code of ethics, and it's not just vibes. We
Yeah.
we are adhering to a code of ethics. So I think that's just a part of being responsible in your practice and profession in any industry. It's a similar thing, if not to a greater extent.
Yeah. So, I mean, we naturally kind of went into the ethics, but before going there, it pretty much sums up that certification adds value, whether or not it actually really matters for an astrologer to have certification. But as an organization and as a group who kind of promotes the professionalization of astrology, I think it is important for. Do you think it is important for us to advocate for astrologers who come in, or at least the newbie astrologers who come in to kind of take up certification courses and deal with recognized schools, especially ISAR has recognized schools, and also there is this CAP professional certification. So how do we? I mean, we obviously have to encourage, but maybe we can do this with the podcast or social media platforms to kind of encourage and educate people in terms of how important certification is. Obviously, astrology can be self-taught or self-studied, but there is most certainly there is value when we actually do with recognized institutions or some kind of a platform such as CAPISAR itself, because it also adds this important quotient called ethics, which brings in the integrity. So, Michelle, I think you have been involved with ethics and for a very long time. So, can you just elaborate in terms of how ethics can be? So, moral ethics is to kind of go and get certified, but it doesn't mean that astrologer necessarily practices with the same ethics when it comes to consultations or when it comes to their social media conduct, which is again very difficult to regulate. So, how do we diversify and kind of pinpoint where the astrologers need to follow the ethics if they need to be kind of in line with the astrological community relative to these organizations, for example, CAPISAR?
Yeah, that's so, ethics is that's a broad subject. And it comes into everything we do. So people think of ethics as kind of like a big, long document, which we do have, and you can find on the ISAR website. And I also think it's on our website somewhere, that we need to check on that.
Yes.
But it's, and you can read it and, it's going step by step, your responsibility to your clients, your responsibility to the community, these areas where we need to do things. But it's hard to read a document and know how that applies to your own day-to-day practice, how you're showing up at a conference, for instance, right? Or volunteering at a conference or teaching. All these different, we think sometimes just the consulting room, but we're interacting in all these different ways. What if someone invites us to come on to a radio show?
Yeah.
Right? What are the boundaries there? The thing that I think certification helps with, and also going to the there's schools, you mentioned them, they're affiliated schools. These are schools that ISAR has gone in, has looked at their curriculum, has validated that it meets a very high standard and will prepare you to take the competency exam through CAP, right? So it's really making sure you have a broad-based, solid astrological education. So you get introduced to those things, to the things that you need to think about. But ultimately, ethics and consulting and all the roles that we play in the community have to do with awareness. And if we're all operating in our own little bubble and our little pods of people that we interact with, we have huge blind spots, not because we're bad astrologers, not because we have bad intentions, but we just don't know. You know, when I started really diving into the ethics of astrology, I was like, whoa, I do that. You know, like there were all these things where, like, once someone kind of opened the door and let me see into it, I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing that. I should probably handle it this way rather than that way. And that's one of the benefits of actually getting training and exposing yourself so that you, and same thing with going to school. Like I was a paid astrologer, you know, before I went to a school, and I got to a proper astrological school, and I was like, I have holes the size of Cleveland in my knowledge, right? Like there's a tendency when you're teaching yourself, which is what I did, to like gravitate to the things you're just drawn to and maybe push to the side the things that you're less interested in. And all once you get to school and you're going to do everything, you know, different, you know, I learned some Indian astrology, I learned some Hellenistic astrology, I learned history. And it just changed the context of what I was doing. So these are all the things that I think the professionalization offers people. And it is definitely a value add. You know, my world got bigger, and also my friendships got bigger. I got introduced to an enormous community of people. So it's been very rich.
I think one of the things that you mentioned, which was really important, is that we may not actually know if we do something wrong. We might think that it's just normal, but we don't intend to do something wrong. I think Aristotle starts his ethics by saying that humans are inherently good, but sometimes our intentions may not match what is required of us or what is really happening. So I think from that perspective, it's important to kind of have a good, solid mentorship platform where we learn all the intricacies of dealing with the code of conduct and practice of astrology. Patrick, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna. I can add that. Michelle mentioned we have blind spots sometimes. You know, we need to recognize our implicit biases and how that can affect directly, you know, the way that you make certain interpretations, the way you interact with certain clients in certain situations. And like you said, there might be things that you currently do where I think if you looked at the sort of overview of ethics that we give in our training, that might make you have a few illuminating moments, you know, about your own, you know, practice, or show you a perspective that you just never considered before, and maybe you did something that you didn't realize could be harmful. You know, I think that's you know, I think I had, you know, some experiences like that, like realizing like, oh, I hadn't really thought of how, you know, talking about someone's chart without that person's consent, you know, could potentially like damage me later on or something like that. You know, those issues have to be kind of handled, you know, more quite carefully. And so yeah, there's just so many things you can say about it, but yeah, that's what occurred to me is especially the ethics portion. I mean, competency is super important as well. Obviously, that's like, I would say, probably the main knowledge barrier, I think, to getting a certification with CAPISAR. The ISAR affiliated schools, you know, absolutely do match the task, I guess, of getting students prepared. But we also acknowledge the reality that students are often self-taught or finding their own way. So we just want to let you know that certification is not off the table. You know, for people who have learned their own ways, they simply have to complete our trainings, have at least 3 courses from an ISAR affiliated school or from another independent astrology school. And pass the competency exam and other exams and trainings, and there is a path. There is a path to do this if you are more of a self-taught person, or if you have cobbled together your education. We are serving all astrologers. But we still highly recommend the ISAR affiliated schools as kind of the preferred and best method to get your elective course requirements and to be fully prepared for the exams and trainings.
Wonderful. So
Yeah,
I think
we also haven't really said much about consulting skills, but consulting skills and ethics are kind of,
Yeah.
two wings of the same bird,
correct.
because in both places, the ethics training and in consulting skills, you are practicing, and exploring and discussing what it looks like to be ethical, to like be aware of the power you have in the situation so that you're wielding it consciously,
Yeah.
and that you're honoring people's boundaries and autonomy. Like they're really kind of working from two different directions on the same set of skill sets.
Yeah.
Maybe it would help if we describe and identify those
the
elements of
three.
the certification. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think anyway, we will be kind of discussing all these topics in a very detailed manner in different separate episodes where a lot of information will be shared. But I think this is a very good start off ground that we have already laid. And yeah, as Michelle, you mentioned that the ethics and consulting skills, I think ethics with consulting skills kind of comes one full circle. And sometimes learning astrology and also dealing with ethics and understanding the consulting skills can also shape us as human beings in terms of how we interact with fellow astrologers and how we deal with on social media platforms with a very conscious effort in terms of not to bring disrepute to our field and also the astrologers. So, which is something that's very important, but not always kind of explicitly known for astrologers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is social media is a whole new, um, I mean, we're all learning social media, right? It's kind of the Wild West. It's all, it's been developing over some years, but um, social media etiquette isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
There's a
Well,
tendency for things to get quite divisive sometimes. And then the question is, how do you work within that? How do you show up professionally
right.
in those situations rather than getting tied up with your opinion?
And by
Yeah.
promoting certification, we think that if people have gone through, say, the ethics training and taken the ethics exam, they're gonna, maybe that's moving the needle a little bit in helping people kind of self-regulate their
Yeah.
actions online. If they've taken a whole exam, on how to react and respond professionally to other astrologers or to criticism of themselves, it would. I feel like this isn't just something for astrologers. I think I think a lot of people would benefit from
Yeah.
taking having some ethics instruction before going online. But but obviously in the world of astrology, what's kind of unfair for astrologers is for a lot of people outside of astrology and as well as a lot of people who are more skeptical of astrology. Unfortunately, we all have to be ambassadors of
Yeah.
the study itself.
Exactly.
Our our worst moments, can be, kind of used against our entire field.
Correct.
And so, when any sort of prominent astrologer is violating, those kind of ethical guidelines we've set out, like that doesn't just hurt themselves and their own reputation, but it has a broader damage that it can do to the way that people perceive astrology. And for people who are already hostile to astrology or skeptical of astrology, it's going to just be that extra bit of confirmation that, like, oh yeah, this is just confirming every bad thing I've ever thought about astrology or astrologers. And so there's there is a cost to the whole field when these kinds of crazy things can happen. So thankfully it doesn't happen too often. Thankfully it doesn't get out of hand too much, but I mean it's and this isn't just a problem in astrology either as well, but I think that I think we do feel I think we uniquely situated such that it doesn't take a lot for one person to do a lot of damage to a whole field. Anyway.
For sure. Yeah, I think as part of regulating people and trying to stop people from bringing disrepute or educating what their unintended actions can do to the field, we also kind of regulate and direct the field towards greater professionalization as probably a byproduct, so which is very good. And I think CAPISAR has played an important role and is still playing an important role, and I'm pretty sure it will continue to play the role in a much better way with a lot of expansions. Michelle, please.
Well, I was just thinking that in terms of like as astrologers are all kind of geeks, right? We're all knowledge hounds. We like to read. We like to think about different ideas and apply those ideas. And that's the competency piece, right? Those are that kind of the hard skills of like how, what works, what doesn't work, applying techniques, these kinds of things. And it's the consulting. So there's a 3-part program. So we test the competency. That's the part that astrologers really like to get online and hammer out and show like, hey, here's the data. This is awesome. Look at it and play. Look at it and work, right?
Yeah.
And we sometimes are missing the consulting skills, which were much more about listening, right?
Yeah.
And actually being aware and paying attention to the people around us rather than the focus being on ourselves and what we know.
Sure.
Right? Because we know a lot. We all tend to be data heads. And the ethics, also gives the impact of like, hey, when we're not being thoughtful about how we're applying that data, these are some of the impacts that can happen. So this kind of 3-part training where you're like, yeah, we're going to test your skill, but we're also going to really unpack and look at our communication skills, our listening skills, how, what the power and boundary dynamics are when you're working with people, not just in the consulting room, but like at the conference, within your community, because as Patrick said, we're all ambassadors, so that, you get the people side of it, not just the data side of it. And I think that's really critical here, because it means it's not just our clients that we're impacting. It's actually the relationships in our lives, all of them, that end up being impacted.
And sometimes you can be 100% right about something, but be 100% wrong to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point that Michelle mentioned, and you kind of, so it's sometimes we shouldn't say something, and just to kind of show off the skill. Some astrologers may do that, but having a good mentorship and taking this 3-pillared course, I think will kind of regulate an astrologer to kind of know when to maintain a low profile and not to kind of shoot out their what they think is knowledge could be detrimental. Yeah.
Humility and self-awareness.
Sure.
Yeah.
Humility is a big one.
Yeah, part of it comes from I think just practice as well. I don't think it's an exact science of knowing exactly when and how to deliver certain things. I think in my own sort of experience and my own practice, I really try to. I think when I first started like doing any kind of readings for people, maybe in my like early 20s, not like even for payment, but just because someone wanted me to look at their chart or something, a friend or something. I think I wanted to immediately sort of show them what I knew, and that eventually transitioned to, as I began to work with more people, realizing that I really needed to think more about what they needed, to center what I'm talking about to their needs. So I now, my whole approach is so different. I'm not talking about, all the things I know. I'm using the techniques that will, I think, actually help the person in that particular time.
Sure.
I'm not there to, show all the things I know. I'm there to help them with their particular um, need, at that moment. And so, even so, it can be really, really tricky. And these are things that I do think the ethics training addresses, but
Okay.
how to deal with when you have like difficult information that you would need to be sort of honest about, potentially, that a chart might indicate without needlessly frightening someone, and also gauging whether or not it's going to be helpful to even put this out there to begin with. You're going to have to do some amount of self-regulating, self-censoring. You don't want to needlessly frighten someone. And you can be wrong about things, right? It is everyone.
Yes.
I don't care who you are.
There's
Every astrologer has been like, has a major thing that they've been wrong about. Like, it just, we don't have, a perfect awareness or a perfect system of combination techniques. I mean, some astrologers, I'm sure,
we're
can get pretty close,
human.
but we're human
We're
beings,
human.
I think
you know,
accepting that makes us more humble. So
yeah. And,
Yes.
and also, I know for myself that I tend to do much worse with my analysis about situations that I care a lot about, um,
yeah,
that I may have hopes for a different outcome, or I know that I mean, I don't know how many more examples I need to get from my life to finally understand, like, that it's very difficult for me to evaluate like my own chart or my own life. Like, I mean, I have had some major successes as well, but I also know that like I will, if I see something bad, I'm going to tend towards the more positive interpretation of it. Or if I see negative things, I'm sort of hoping for like the least bad outcome, even if that kind of goes against a little bit of the sort of severity of the situation as indicated by those transits. So, yeah, it's a very, very difficult thing, but we must not do harm, in anything that we do.
yeah. I think we are all products of our own bias, and sometimes we may get kind of deviated or distracted by those biases, and to not be biased is probably one of the lifelong learnings for an astrologer. And
And it's actually kind of impossible not to have bias because our brains are actually wired to make shortcuts all the time. So the
yeah,
trick is to recognize we're going to have bias. They come from the lenses that we have, period. The culture we're grown up, our own personal lived experience, our family, all of those things. But it's creating the little space that we can go like, oh, I was going to make a shortcut and I'm not going to.
I
Gonna
do think
hold
that,
myself
yeah,
there.
I think that's another way in which I think just like practice and experience has kind of made me, I've just been like brute forced to be like less judgmental, because even if the set of circumstances are such that like I might be like judging a client for something they're telling me, I mean, I've had people literally, I mean, not like very serious crimes, but like people have like confessed some interesting things to me where I'm kind of like, all right, well, I'm gonna overlook that just for a second and still think about how I can help you as an astrologer. And I think it's kind of interesting because astrology, astrologers are represented by Mercury traditionally, and Mercury is kind of has this history of being not not necessarily strictly masculine, not necessarily strictly feminine, not strictly diurnal, not strictly nocturnal. It's kind of neutral in a sense, and I feel like that's what astrologers sort of have to try to be, even though it is very it's impossible in some ways to avoid. But yeah, you do have to be kind of detached from the situation, and that's where I think I have some of my best calls for people whose situations I'm completely removed from, and whose I have no necessarily personal stake necessarily in what I'm saying. So I feel like I have been able to kind of do better astrology in some cases, because I'm just less affected by my own feelings about how something will go.
I think emotional detachment works very well when we do astrology, and if we are emotionally attached to a particular person or a situation, especially when it comes to mundane astrology, and also when it comes to someone who is very close to us, where we are having a lot of emotional investment in a situation, we tend to kind of lose or get a little jolted. But I think that is an experience that we have to learn as we make progress as astrologers. But I'm pretty sure people who kind of take the competency exams, ethics and consulting skills papers will most certainly be at least aware of what we need to be as astrologers, and impose some form of self-regulation to kind of ensure professionalism in our work. Uh, so I think this is a good time for us to move to our talk about our members and what kind of roles that they do. Little quickly, no need to be a very uh, lengthy introduction or something. So I think Lars Mellis is CAPISAR's competency exam chair, and yeah.
Yeah, he is the person who proctors the competency exam. He grades the competency exams. I assist with this as needed, but Lars is the our main point person regarding the exam, and he'll also be leading our efforts to renew and revamp the exam for the competency exams. So yeah, that's what Laws is up to in CAPISAR. So yeah,
And
we're very grateful for him.
yeah. And then we have Catherine Goshen, who is consulting skills chair.
Yeah, no,
Catherine,
she's fabulous. Yeah,
Mhm.
Catherine is therapist and as well as an astrologer and leading, the chair of our consulting skills program. And she's a wonderful trainer, and she really gets people to open up and think about how they're interacting with people um, in the consulting room, and gives people skills, new skills. Like I said, we all have, most people who are working in astrology, they already have their astrological chops. It's all these much more nuanced language and listening that can just take what might be a solid informational session with someone to a whole new level of depth, and move it into the place of um, something that is much more therapeutic and profound. So she's just amazing, and I love that course. So I wish everyone took that course.
She actually was my trainer when she was part of the team that's training me for when I did the consulting skills training myself, and I was impressed enough by her that I realized she would make a really good consulting skills chair once I became president. And so luckily, thankfully, she finally agreed. But yeah, I found the consulting skills training myself to be very interesting, because I came to it as someone who'd already been consulting for many years by that point. But I thought it turns out a dog can still learn new tricks, and I that I took away from those trainings that I still kind of have with me today. I just want to say that for anyone who for anyone who's already been practicing a long time and doesn't have the certification, like you can still get a lot out of the trainings and certifications we have. Like it's not I doubt that you've thought of everything. I mean, if you have, great, good for you, but I doubt it. So yeah, take it. But so we talked about laws. We talked about Catherine.
Megan Green
Who's
is
next?
the CAPISAR secretary.
Yeah, Megan Green is an amazing secretary. She handles sort of main inbox and responding to people. She is the one who makes all of our certificates. She's a pretty essential person in our organization.
She's our glue.
Yeah, we definitely rely on Megan. In Megan, we trust.
Yeah. And Tara All has, I think, just joined and she has taken over the ethics. And I know her very personally, and she's a straight shooter when it is necessary. And I think she is the right person for the job. But I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so Tara and I worked along with Samuel Reynolds and Lynn. Lynn's last name just popped out of my head.
Bell?
No. Oh, now I can't get Bell out of my head. It'll come back.
Sorry.
So there are four of us that spent a year revamping the code, ISAR's code of ethics, and the process and by which people can bring forward complaints to give them a better understanding of what a member organization can and can't do in terms of complaints when they come through. So when I started taking over ethics and revamping the entire ethics program, I pulled in a few people that I knew were really deeply steeped in ethics, and Tara was one of them. And so we would train together. So I was delighted when she decided she would come and be the ethics chair. So she's a great trainer, but she also knows that document in and out. Right? Like she's been there from the foundation of revamping that thing. When you spend a year weekly looking over a document, like you learn it, you know it. So she's awesome.
Yeah, I think
Michelle and Tara
really
were also my coaches for the for the ethics training. So I feel like all of the people I learned under are now working on the team. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ashley.
No problem. That's fine. And we have the amazing Gabby. I have to say amazing.
Yes,
Yeah.
the other glue to the team. Between her and Megan, they keep us on the straight and narrow, make sure that the things that need to get done are getting done, bringing things to our attention, that when we're getting focused on a particular thing, they're like, and this still needs to be handled. So they're amazing.
Yeah, very, very grateful to have Gabby on board. She's really just kind of a Swiss Army knife in some ways, but yeah. And,
they're our dynamic duo.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy that they're with us.
Excellent. Finally, we have Nicholas Polymenakos.
Yeah, so Nicholas joined us. Yeah, Nicholas joined us as our social media manager, and this is something that we have desperately needed for a long, long time. I remember when I first came on to this position, like the number one thing they were like is like, all right, you guys need any social media kind of operation, and it's taken us a while even to get to this point, but thankfully we now have the kind of infrastructure set up where it's going to be more straightforward for us to pursue kind of a grander social media strategy.
Sure.
Pardon me. And so Nicholas is a big part of that.
Absolutely. So shout out to Cameron Allen and Astrobal. for their
Yeah.
commitment.
Yeah, Cameron Allen and Asdrubal Marino is the vice president of ISAR. But he joins. Yeah, so the reason we're talking about them is, although they're not part of CAPISAR, they are part of ISAR. They're kind of, I guess you could say, representatives of ISAR, and they come join us in our weekly meetings. And so, yeah, I worked quite
They're
closely
honorary
to
peeps.
Asdrubal. Yeah, the honorary. They're very friends of the CAPISAR board, and I worked with Asdrubal a lot, and he is just such a kind person, and yeah, I like him a lot, and is a great teacher as well. He
Yeah,
has an
same can
amazing
be said for
school in
Cameron. They're
Chile.
both great.
Yes, Cameron too.
Yeah.
Cameron
Yeah.
Cameron provides a lot of zen for our crew.
Very kind.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And
he
also
is.
just, yeah, because we are an organization working on its own, but under the umbrella, they provide that channel of communication back and forth to, let's say, the mothership. So that's
Right.
very helpful. They know what's going on for us. They can communicate it back to the entire ISAR board. When things are going to the ISAR board that might kind of influence maybe some of the discussion we're having here, they give it that, they're providing us that information so we can make better decisions. So they've been
And
very, very critical.
we
We
shouldn't
shouldn't
forget
forget one person.
there's one other person we shouldn't forget, and that is Aswin. Aswin Subramanyan is our treasurer and also our CAPISAR podcast host.
I think I like to take the second because I've been lying dormant and sleeping, and finally, because of you, I'm getting my act together to kind of actually contribute in the form of podcast, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, no, we're excited too. We're
So-
super excited about this.
And I think that pretty much brings us to the end of this first episode. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be great. And thank you so much, Patrick and Michelle, for joining this. I think this sets a very good platform for us to kind of take it forward, and we look forward to kind of having you in a lot of future episodes. And we have amazing guests, most of your favorite astrologers lined up, to join the podcast, and I'm pretty sure everything is going to be great. So,
Awesome.
thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.